Welcome back to Storytime with Belle, everyone. When we last left off our dear Princess Buttercup, she was in the clutches of Vizzini, and the man in black had come to rescue her. Or at least that's what we thought. The man in black wanted to ransom her off, while Vizzini wanted to kill her, so which is truly worse? Well, the man in black did outsmart Vizzini with the use of iocane powder. The man in black had grown immunity towards it. He knew how to handle it. Something, of course, the Sicilian would never have counted on. So now the Princess Buttercup is in the clutches of the man in black. And we still don't know who he is and what he truly wishes from her. But we do know what we do find out who he is. He's the mysterious, long-lost love, Wesley. The man we thought was all killed by the dread pirate Roberts. Let's continue and find out what happens to them as we continue Chapter 5. From his position point of the Armada, Prince Humperdinck stared at the cliffs of insanity. This was unlike any other hunt. He made himself think away the quarry. It did not matter if you were an antelope or a bride-to-be. The procedures held. You gathered evidence. Then you acted. You studied. Then you performed. If you studied too late, the chances were strong that your actions would also be too late. You had to take the time. And so, frozen in thought, he continued to stare up the sheer face of the cliffs. Obviously, someone had climbed recently. There were foot scratchings all the way up a straight line, which meant most certainly a rope. An arm-over-arm climb up a 1,000-foot rope, with occasional foot kicks for balance. To make such a climb required both strength and planning. So the prince made those marks in his brain. My enemy is strong. My enemy is not impulsive. Now his eyes reached a point, perhaps 300 feet from the top. Here it began to get interesting. Now the foot scratches were deeper, more frequent, and they followed no direct descending line. Either someone left the rope 300 feet from the top intentionally, which made no sense, or the rope was cut, while that someone was still 300 feet from safety. For clearly, the last part of the climb was made up the rock face itself. But who had such talent? And why had he been called to exercise it at such a deadly time, 700 feet above disaster? I must examine the tops of the cliffs of insanity, the prince said, without bothering to turn. From behind him, Count Rugen only said, "Done," and awaited further instructions. Send half the Armada south along the coastline, the other north. They should meet by twilight near the fire swamp. Our ship will sail to the first landing possibility, and you will follow me with your soldiers. Ready the whites." Count Rugen signaled the cannoneer, and the prince's instructions boomed along the cliffs. Within minutes, the Armada had begun to split, and only the prince's giant ship, sailing alone close to the coastline, looked for a landing possibility. "There," the prince ordered some time later, and his ship began maneuvering to the cove for a safe place to anchor. That took time, but not much time, because the captain was skilled, and more than that, the prince was quick to lose patience, and no one dared risk that. Humperdinck jumped from ship to shore, a plank was lowered, and the whites were led to ground. Of all of his accomplishments, none pleased the prince as did these horses. Someday he would have an army of them, but getting the bloodline perfect was a slow business. He now had 4 whites, and they were identical, snowy, tireless giants, 20 hands high. On flat land, nothing could catch them, and even on hills and rocky terrain, there was nothing short of ever be close to their equal. The prince when rushed, rode all 4 bareback, the only way he ever rode, riding 1, leading 3, changing beasts in mid-stride, so no single animal had to bear his bulk to the tiring point. Now he mounted and was gone. It took him considerably less than an hour to reach the edge of the cliffs of Insanity. He dismounted, went to his knees, commenced his study of the terrain. There had been a rope tied to the giant oak. The bark at the base of the base was broken and scraped. So probably whoever first reached the top untied the rope, and whoever was at the rope at the moment when 300 feet from the peak had somehow survived the climb. A great jumble of footprints caused him trouble. It was hard to ascertain what had gone on. Perhaps a conference, because 2 sets of footprints seemed to lead off while 2 remained on the cliff edge, facing the cliff edge. Then there were 2 on the cliff edge. Humperdinck examined the prints, and he was certain of 2 things. 1. A fencing match had taken place. 2. The combatants were both masters. The stride length, the quickness of the foot feints, all clearly revealed by his unfailing eye, and made him reassess his second conclusion. There were at least masters. Probably better. When he closed his eyes and concentrated on smelling out the blood, surely it was a match of such ferocity, blood must have been spilled. Now it was a matter of giving his entire body over to his sense of smell. The prince had worked out this for many years, ever since a wounded tigress had surprised him from a tree limb and while he was tracking her. He had let his eyes follow the blood hunt, and it had almost killed him. Now he trusted only his olfactories. If there was blood within 100 yards, he would find it. He opened his eyes, moved without hesitation toward a group of large boulders until he found the blood drops. There were a few of them, and they were dry, but less than 3 hours old. Humperdinck smiled. When you had the whites under you, 3 hours was a finger snap. He retraced the duel then, for it confused him. It seemed to range from cliff edge and back, and then return to the cliff edge. And sometimes the left foot seemed to be leading, sometimes the right, which made no logical sense at all. Clearly, swordsmen were changing hands. But why would a master do that unless his good arm was wounded to the point of uselessness? And that clearly was not what happened, because a wound of that depth would have left blood spears. And there was simply not enough blood in the area to indicate that. Strange. Humperdinck continued his wanderings. Stranger still, the battle could not have ended in death. He knelt by the outline of a body. Clearly a man had lain unconscious there. But again, no blood. There was a mighty duel, Humperdinck said, directing his comment toward Count Rugen, who had finally caught up, together with a contingent of 100 mounted men-at-arms. My guess would be, and for a moment the prince paused, following footsteps, would be that whoever fell here ran off there. He pointed one way, and whoever was the victor ran off along the mountain path, in almost precisely the opposite direction. It is also my opinion that the victor was following the path taken by the princess. Shall we follow them both? The count asked. I would think not, Humperdinck replied. Whoever is gone is the minimal of importance, since whoever has the princess is whoever we're after. And because we don't want now the nature of the trap we might be being led into, we need all the arms we have gathered in one band. Clearly, this has been planned by the countrymen of Gilder, and nothing must ever be put past them. You think this is a trap, then? The count asked. I always think everything is a trap until proven otherwise, the prince answered, which is why I'm still alive. And with that, he was back aboard a white and galloping. When he reached the mountain path where the hand fight happened, the prince did not even bother dismounting. Everything could be seen was quite visible from horseback. Someone has beaten a giant, he said, when the count was close enough. The giant has run away, do you see? The count, of course, saw nothing but rock and mountain path. I would not think to doubt you. And look there, cried the prince, because now he was for the first time in a rumble of a mountain path. So the footsteps of a woman. The princess is alive! And again the whites were thundering across the mountain. When the Count caught up with him again, the prince was kneeling over the still body of a hunchback. The prince dismounted. "Smell this," the prince said, and he handed him a goblet. "Nothing," the prince said. "No odor at all." "Aye, king," the prince replied. "I would bet my life on it. I know of nothing else that kills so silently." He stood up then. The princess was still alive. Her footprints followed that path. He shouted at the 100 mountain men. "There will be great suffering in Gilder if she dies." On foot now, he ran along the mountain path, following the footsteps that he alone could see. And when those footprints left the path for wilder terrain, he followed still. Strung out behind him, the Count and all the soldiers did their best to keep up. Men stumbled, horses fell. Even the Count tripped from time to time. Prince Humperdinck never even broke stride. He ran steadily, mechanically, his barrel legs pumping like a metronome. It was 2 hours before dawn when he reached the steep ravine. It was 2 hours after dawn when he had reached the steep ravine. "Odd," he said to the Count, who was tiring badly. The Count continued only to breathe deeply. 2 bodies fell to the bottom, but they did not come back up. "That is odd," the Count managed. "No, isn't what's odd," the prince corrected. "Clearly, the kidnapper did come back up because the climb was too steep, and our cannons must have let him know that they were closely pursued. His decision, which I applaud, was to make better time running across the ravine floor." The Count waited for the prince to continue. "It's just odd that a man who is a master fencer, a defeater of giants, an expert in the use of iocane powder, would not know what this ravine opens into." "And what is that?" asked the Count. "The fire swamp," said Prince Humperdinck. "Then we have him," said the Count. "Precisely so." It was a well-documented trait of his smile, only just before his kill. His smile was very much in evidence now. Wesley, indeed, had not the least idea that he was racing dead into the fire swamp. He knew only, once Buttercup was down the ravine bottom beside him, that to climb out would take, as Prince Humperdinck had assumed, too much time. Wesley noted only that the ravine bottom was flat-rocked and heading in the general direction he wanted to follow. So he and Buttercup fled along, both of them very much aware that gigantic forces were following them, and undoubtedly cutting into their lead. The ravine grew increasingly sheer as they went along, and Wesley soon realized that, whereas he probably could have helped her through the climb, now there was simply no way of doing so. He had made his choice, and there was no changing possible. Wherever the ravine led was their destination. And that, quite simply, was that. And at this point in the story my wife wants it known that she feels violently cheated, not being allowed to follow the scene reconciliation on the ravine floor of the lovers. And if you really want to know the reply, I suggest buying the book yourself. It's a very long dissertation that William Goldman decides to put in. Never mind. He actually reveals it. I apologize. At this point in the story, my wife wants it known that she feels violently cheated, not being allowed the scene of reconciliation on the ravine floor between the lovers. My reply to her is simply this. A. Each of God's beings, from the lowliest on up, is entitled to at least a few moments of genuine privacy. Very sweet. B. What actually was spoken, while moving enough to those involved in the actual time, flattens like toothpaste when transferred to paper for later reading. My dove, my only, bliss, bliss, etc. C. Nothing of importance in an extraordinary way was related, because every time Buttercup began, "Tell me about yourself," Wesley quickly cut her off with, "Later, beloved. Now is not the time." However, it should be noted in all fairness that 1. He did weep. 2. Her eyes did not remain precisely dry. 3. There was more than one embrace. And 4. Both parties admitted, without any qualifications whatsoever, that they were more than a little glad to see each other. Besides, 5, within a quarter of an hour, they were arguing. It began quite innocently, the two of them kneeling facing each other, Wesley holding her perfect face in his quick hands. "When I left you," he whispered, "you were already more beautiful than anything I dared to dream. In our years apart, my imaginings did their best to improve your perfection. At night, your face was forever behind my eyes. And now I see that the vision who kept me company in my loneliness was a hag compared to the beauty now before me." That's really the most not romantic thing. "Enough about my beauty," Buttercup said. "Everybody always talks about how beautiful I am. I've got a mind, Wesley. Talk about that." "Throughout eternity, I shall do that very thing," he told her. "But now we haven't time," he said. He made it to his feet. The ravine fall had shaken and battered him, but all his bones surveyed the tip uncracked. He helped her to her feet. "Wesley," Buttercup said, "just before I started down after you, while I was still up there, I could hear you say something, but the words were indistinct. I've forgotten whatever it was." Terrible liar. He smiled at her and kissed her cheek. "It's not important. Believe me, the past is a way of being past. We must not begin with secrets from each other," she began to. You could tell that. "Trust me," he said. "I do. So tell me your words, or I shall be given reason not so." Wesley sighed. "What I was trying to get through to you, beloved sweet, whatever I was, as a matter of accurate fact, shouting with everything I had left, was, whatever you do, stay up there. Don't come down here, please." "You didn't want to see me?" "Of course I wanted to see you. I just didn't want to see you down here." "Why ever not?" "Because now, my precious, we're more or less kind of trapped. I can't climb out of here and bring you with me without it taking all day. I can't get out by myself, most likely, without it taking all day, but with the addition of your lovely bulk, it's not about to happen." "Nonsense! You climb the cliffs of insanity, and that isn't nearly that steep. And this isn't nearly that steep. And it took a little out of me, too, let me tell you. And after that little effect, I tangled with a fellow who knew a little something about fencing. And after that, I spent a few happy moments grappling with a giant. And after that, I had a fake out with a Sicilian to death, when any mistake meant it was a knife in the throat for you. And after that, I've run my lungs out a couple of hours. And after I was pushed 200 feet down a rock ravine, I tried Buttercup. Do you understand? I put in a night of what I'm trying to get through to you. I'm not stupid, you know. Quit bragging. Stop being rude. When was the last time you read a book? The truth now. And picture books don't count. I mean something with print in it." Buttercup walked away from him. "There's other things to read than print," she said. "And the Princess of Hammersmith is displeased with you and is thinking seriously of going home." With no more words, she whirled into his arms and sang, "Oh, Wesley, I didn't mean that. I didn't, not a single syllable of it." Now Wesley knew that she meant to say not a single syllable of it, because a syllabub was something you ate. The cream and wine mixed together to form a base. but he also knew an apology when he heard one. So he held her close very close, and shut his loving eyes and only whispered, "I knew it was false. Believe me." Every single syllable. And that out of the way, they started running as fast as they could along the flat rock floor of the ravine.